That's a big part of kids coaching is you most of the time you're not teaching biking. Like a good kids coach should be teaching respect, empathy, um, uh, leadership in the kids, teaching the kids how to work together, teaching the kids about teamwork, teaching the kids about being humble. You're teaching that stuff just as much as you're teaching biking and braking and body position.
3, 2, 1, 0, 0, and liftoff. Welcome to Donuts and Bikes, the mountain biking coaching podcast. Your hosts are Kristian and Paul, and we're here to discuss the skills, techniques, and tactics we've used to progress our riders and coaches over the past 20 years to become more skillful and confident, and ultimately have more fun on bikes. So click into a harder gear and get ready to dig deep into some of these skills.
Paul, it is good to see you again. It has been a while.
It has, man. It's been a while. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, we saw each other briefly in Whistler this summer.
Yeah.
In the midst of a major life change for you.
Yeah, moving house. Good times. Don't ever want to do that again. So
I can't imagine. Last time we moved as a family was in 2008.
Yeah.
And Jude, our youngest, has just been born. I can't imagine moving now. I can't.
Yeah, don't do it. It's a good tip. Mind you, the actual moving day was because we hired a moving company. So the actual moving day was way easier than the last time we moved, where we tried to do a bunch ourselves. But after that, it's like the aftermath of endless boxes, and there's pictures everywhere on the floor. But already it's awesome. Just so pumped on the new place. So,
cool. Do you want to share with our listeners where you all are now?
We moved up to Pemby, the land of potatoes and farming, and so good. Space, the land of garages. I have a garage. Yay. So good.
It's a major life upgrade.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like I've never really lived in Canada in a place on a level lot. Like I've always had to go upstairs to the house, and like our old place had like 3 flights of stairs to the back of the house. So I never really appreciated driving up to your driveway, taking your bike out of your truck, and then putting it into the garage, which is right next to the driveway. Like that to me is like I would live in a box just so I could do that, and I don't have to haul all my gear up 2 or 3 flights of stairs.
Think about all the cumulative time that you just saved.
Oh man, it's crazy.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, in the old house, you'd forget something and be like, oh, shit, I've got to go all the way back up there. Or you'd get in and you'd left something in the truck and be like, oh, shit, got to go. Whereas now, it's like literally next to my front door. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah, so that alone, it's a good upgrade. But how's life with you? You've had some transitions lately as well.
Yeah, life is good. We sent our oldest to college, which happens to be just down the road where my wife and I both teach, but
nice.
It's living in the dorm, which it's been a huge life adjustment for us, not having him in the house and trying to learn through that process and getting excited for him, for his, just the freedom and independence, decision-making, friends, there's all the newness, right? All the newness is just, it's so cool for him. And
that's emotional times. That's crazy.
It is. And, I think each phase as a parent you go through, like you're never really ready for the next phase.
Yeah.
It seems like we're always like 6 months behind, whatever happened. We're like 6 months, goes by. We're like, oh yeah. Okay, cool. Now we know how to do this. And so we're still in that.
You're constantly being put into new situations that you've never really been in before, and you're like, it takes you a while. But yeah, that's. I always joke with my kids, like, you hit 18, like, see you later. Like, we're kicking you out on your 18th birthday, and but then secretly inside, I'm like, no, I never want them to leave.
Yeah. it's an interesting time as a parent. It's definitely a change that couldn't have anticipated how it would feel, and it's been quite a process as a family unit to go through it all. But we're all doing well and excited
cool,
for
man.
it.
Kids,
bikes have helped.
Bikes have helped.
Bikes have helped. Yeah, in the transition for sure.
Yeah, because you've been riding with him a bit, haven't you? Like he's.
Yeah. I mean, I'll actually we'll run into him at the bike park and
sick.
Like, all right, let's do a lap on the jump trail. And so
nice. Bikes are so rad for that.
Absolutely.
And that's something I hope, like as the kids get older and they come, I guess they go out into the world and they come back. It's like they can come back and hopefully we can just go for a bike ride and connect on the bikes again. Yeah. Cool. Kids. That's kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So this episode, we are going to look at coaching kids, riding with kids, kind of intro to all things kids.
Nice.
And I think, for a lot of people that get into mountain bike coaching, this is the PB&J of coachings, right? It's working with kids. So a lot of us kind of get our start and some of us kind of stay with it, whether it's coaching business or, here in the States, we have the NICA program. The high school and middle school race teams across the nation are huge. And so a lot of adults and young people are actually, coaching kids. So I think it's a pertinent topic for us. And you've spent a lot of the summer coaching and racing, right?
Yeah. We've been doing. I mean, we have a pretty extensive kids program in Whistler, and I think for me, teaching kids is really where everything started. So it's going to be good today. I'm looking forward to sort of getting into teaching kids and why you all should do it if you haven't done it, and how it can really, really help your coaching, even help your adults coaching. It's just the most fulfilling, fun work I've ever done is working with kids. That on or off the bike, like working with kids is definitely up there with some of the best things I've done.
Cool. Paul, how did you get into that? How'd you start with coaching kids?
Working with kids. I mean, I've kind of worked with kids since I was a kid. Like I've worked on summer camps as a kid with kids with disabilities, since I was a teenager, and I've always just enjoyed working with kids, and then in Scouts and working with kids there. And then mostly in my gap year. So before I went to uni, I lived in Australia for a year, and I worked as an assistant teacher in Alice Springs in the middle of nowhere. And I was a boarding house supervisor there as well. And I worked with Aboriginal kids for a year, which was heartbreaking in some ways, but like that's a year that I'll never forget. It was one of the most incredible experiences. Some of the loveliest, warmest kids from some of the harshest backgrounds. And I actually started coaching kids biking in Australia there. And then once I got to uni, I started coaching kids mountain biking in North Carolina. And that's where our kind of stories start to kind of connect a little bit. But basically since, early mid-90s, just been working with kids. So it's getting on a bit, nearly 30 years or something like that. Holy cow. What about you? Tell us your story a little bit, because I know you've got a ton of big background with working with kids.
Yeah, when you say numbers like 30 years of doing that, it's like, wow, has it really been that long? But I think, for me, I kind of started out as a high school teacher pretty early in my career as an adult. I wasn't too much older than the kids at the high school, when you kind of zoom out. But I think I've shared part of this story on here before, but one of the principals asked me to basically start an after school bike club for the kids, because I biked or my mountain biking to work every day. So this would be something cool to do. And at the time, I didn't really perceive it as coaching or guiding or anything. It was just, I'm going to go ride bikes with these kids and we're going to go have fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And it was, I think it's a really cool experience because you're starting to, for me as a teacher, starting to connect and associate with the kids in a way that's not the classroom.
Yeah.
And it's starting to break down some of the structural barriers of education, and we're actually out there doing something. And that's kind of where in those early days of leading kids on trails, it kind of sparked the idea of experiential education for me and pursuing that as a career in the outdoors.
I think one thing that kind of put me onto, like, as you were talking there, was like, the thing I think the bike does, or any outdoor activity does, is it kind of takes the structure / barriers away, but it kind of puts everyone on a level playing field. Like, it's funny how some of our backgrounds are the same. Like, I first started working with kids on bikes in Australia for the similar reason. Like, I was an assistant teacher there, and mostly with PE and outdoor ed. And we used to do some epic kind of 9-10 day adventures in the bush, taking kids through the bush for 10 days and creeks and water holes and hiking. And some of these kids were telling me about this jump that they hit on their bikes. And so one week they took me out there, and it's this super sketchy jump, and this is like 90s, so we didn't really have good bikes back then either. But just seeing how much fun they were having trying to do this jump, and it just sort of happened organically. And because at that point it was like, I was no longer a teacher, they were no longer really kids. We were just all trying to figure out these sketchy jumps. And then we figured out that actually they're just sketchy and we should go on a ride. But it kind of just took that whole like teacher student thing away, and we were all just having a laugh on bikes.
As you're speaking there, it made me realize that when I was a kid and I was around the adults that did exactly what you're talking about, how much I was inspired. Yeah. So just to flip this upside down, thinking about it from the kids' perspective, they're seeing a coach that's functioning. If the coach is functioning on all cylinders and connecting and doing all the stuff we're going to talk about, that's inspiration for them. That's helping that child, see that they can do more than they thought they could, and see past limitations and all that. So, it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that regard.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. Let's dig in.
Absolutely. So talking just a little bit about our own personal values with why coach kids. And I think next here, let's dig into some of the hows, how we go through this. And you and I been doing this for 30 years. I'm not sure that in one podcast we're going to cover it all.
One magical hour with Kristian and Paul in your set.
Yeah. Here you go. A lot of it is learning by doing for me. It sounds like for you as well. But I think that, we've outlined some key points here of like, here's some things that we found over the years that have been helpful for us.
Totally.
And doing this work. And before we pressed record, Paul, we were talking about connections.
Yeah.
And I think that would be just a really awesome place to start, because it's not like, if you started looking through any sort of literature on this, it might not be the first thing that jumps to mind, but I think it's incredibly critical. And we've got some good stuff to talk about. So could you explain maybe to us, like in practical terms, what does this look like? This concept of connection between the coach and the students, the kids.
Yeah, for sure. I think this connection piece is the foundation for any coaching, really, but particularly kids. And partly why is because if it's an adult and an adult, you're coming at things from the same perspective or a similar perspective. If you're a kid and a kid, same thing. But if you're a kid working with an adult or adult working with a kid, inherently there's a gap there. There's a physical gap, a social gap, psychological gap, intelligence gap. So straight away you're trying to work with someone that's at a completely different stage of life. So trying to connect with them is essential, because it will allow them essentially to be vulnerable and to open up. And good coaching requires trust, because essentially anytime you're learning, you're realizing, or you're admitting that there's something you can't do as well as you'd like, or there's something you don't know very much about, and you want to know more. So whether you think about it or not, any kind of learning environment requires a certain amount of openness, vulnerability, to say, hey, I'm not great at this. I want to get better. And that's where the coach or the instructor comes in. And that vulnerability is more or less scary for people depending on who they are and their backgrounds. And it therefore requires trust. Like, that person needs to feel safe, and they need to trust the coach, the teacher, the instructor. So connection is really how we build that trust. Whether they want to open up to you about specifically biking things, or it's even just the fact that they feel like, really with that connection, for me it's a case of, sometimes I look at it on the opposite way. Like, if I don't have the connection, you'll see it. The kids don't really open up to you. They don't really trust you. And everything's on a sliding scale. So it's not really black or white. It's really sort of degrees. So that connection in practical terms is about trust and a feeling of comfort. For me, those are kind of two big keywords. Like, if you can choose some kids in your life that you know, or that you've worked with, kids often don't think about that word trust. That's just something that's there or isn't there. But they'll often relate to or think about the word comfort. Like, am I comfortable with this other human? Am I comfortable to talk to them? Am I comfortable, if I'm scared, to say something? Am I comfortable to ask a question? Am I comfortable to be myself and laugh at a joke, or tell them a silly story, or just, am I comfortable to be me in this environment? So I think the trust leads to that comfort, whether they realize it or not. So to me, that's what connection means in practical terms. It's being comfortable with another person and trusting that other person. And it's an essential piece of coaching, because without that, everything else is immediately harder. If you want to build someone's motivation, you want to build their focus or their discipline to achieve something, if the connection isn't there, it's really hard for the coach to build any of those other things. So I guess that's a good place to start in terms of what the connection is and why it's so important. It's the how piece that I think is a bigger conversation, because there's a lot of different approaches and tools we can use to build that connection. What's your thoughts?
Well, yeah. So before we get into, I think the first tool that I'd like to highlight here, I'd like to add a layer to this concept of connection, because what you're illustrating is this connection from the coach to the kid. And we haven't spoken about defining what ages we're talking about. We'll do that. We'll talk about that later, but just in general, kids, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're teens or younger. But so there's that relationship, and we're going to talk specifically about some tools that coaches can use to make the connection. But then there's this other layer of how the kids connect to the other kids that are in your group, because you're seldom, as a coach, working one-on-one with a child. Like, it's usually in a group, some sort of group setting.
For sure.
And so then how the connection and that vulnerability, as you mentioned, and the trust and the comfortableness is spread out in the group.
Yeah.
And the group dynamic becomes part of something that the coach has to do as well.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I think that, you're hitting the nail on the head. Like, connection isn't just coach student. It's and what one kid, it's really connection within the group. So an individual to the coach, the group to the coach, and then the individuals within the group as well. And obviously the coach is the one managing all of those dynamics.
Yeah. And I think, to be really honest and transparent here, if we were to flash back to when I was guiding and coaching in my early to mid 20s, that was an inability, or I wasn't able to actually manage those connections super well. And you could see it in the group.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of trial by fire because I simply didn't know how to handle that. I felt like I could connect individually, because I could do it in the classroom, but then we've got this, it's a team in a sense, even though it's not, mountain biking is not a team sport, so to speak. You're creating, you've got to create a team.
Yeah.
That is working together towards some sort of common goal, which doesn't sound like that goes hand in hand with going to ride mountain bikes on a trail, but it does.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. And it's making me think of some things this summer where it's like the coaches that are successful, they're not just managing their relationship with each kid. They are managing as much, if not more so, the relationships between the kids. And so really they're doing that by teaching things like respect. They're teaching things like patience and positive attitude and empathy. Like whether they realize it or not, sometimes they're quite purposeful about that coaching. Sometimes it's more subtle. But yeah, they're managing the relationships, the connections between the kids is just as important as managing your relationship with each kid. A connection piece is huge, and the what and the why is massive, and then digging into the how, that's a big piece.
But I think maybe a good segue into the how for us with connection is, how do we view the parents in this relationship? And how do we actually develop a connection with them and see them as an asset to this process, as opposed to the parents are just simply these figures that drop this kid off and here's the kid by himself.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a cool one with parents because depending on the parent, the coach will kind of look forward to seeing the parents or not. And so for any of the parents out there, like how well your kid connects with a coach you can really help in that process. And for the coaches out there, viewing the parents as an asset, it's really the parents are like a bridge between the kid and the coach. And the parents can be a strong bridge and help you connect, or a weak bridge and not help you. Classic examples are when the parents don't share things that would have been really helpful. Like, oh, little Jimmy was late last night because he was at a party and ate loads of sugar and hasn't had a really good breakfast this morning. Like, if that parent had told you that, it would have really helped you be more empathetic to little Jimmy, and that's why he's so tired this morning. But on the flip side, like if the kid isn't perhaps behaving the way you want, they don't have the right motivation or the attitude the way you want, the parents are your asset. So let's be open and transparent with the parents ASAP. Let's talk to the parents, share with the parents, and they can often help in that problem solving. Again, depending on the parents, some parents are more invested, some are less invested, and that's fine. But I think trying to connect with the parents is as important as connecting with the kids. And then beyond that, like viewing the parents as that bridge to help you is a huge component. I was thinking of one example this summer where this one kid was going through some things and wasn't quite having the right attitude to a few things. And as soon as we kind of let the parents know, they basically took care of it. They had a chat with that kid that week, and we didn't have an issue again. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you get the other things where you tell the parents and nothing changes, and you're like, well, I haven't lost anything. I've shared it with the parents. Nothing's changed. Fine. It hasn't hurt the process, so I'll just carry on doing the best I can. So, parents can be a huge, huge asset in that. And sometimes I think it also kind of requires, I don't know if you've ever dealt with this, Kristian, but like where you're teaching the kids how to learn in some ways, like you're training them how to learn, and then you can teach them how to bike. And sometimes there's a little bit of coaching sometimes with the parents, depending on the parents' background, like have they been in coaching programs or do they mountain bike? Like what's their exposure to coaching and biking? And sometimes if they haven't had that exposure, there's a little bit of like subtle coaching with the parent, like this is what we're working on, this is why, or these are the things we need in their behavior so that we can teach them those things you want your kids to learn. And having those conversations and connecting with the parents is a huge asset.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think this is a great segue into kind of our first point under the how part was this kind of categorize this as language and how we use language.
Yeah.
And I think this applies to both the coach to the kid, coach to the parents, and then role modeling kid to kid as well. So that I think there's a nice little triangle there of how this could work. And to dig into this, what we can, kind of the first point, we can say how do we talk to children, and how does that differ than how you and I are talking now, or we might talk to adults? And it kind of can boil down to it's not what we say, but it's how we say it.
Yeah, totally. And it sort of sounds funny, but I've always been able to connect pretty well with kids, or connect quicker to kids than I've seen other people do. And I think it's largely just my background because I've been working with kids forever. But the thing I've picked up is it's really how I say it, not what I say. And often I'll talk to them as adults. I see the people that kind of, and I say that with a pinch of salt, but my experience is when people talk to kids like they're kids, they have a hard time connecting. And the reason for that is because I think it's because kids see adults talk to other adults all the time. They see you talk a certain way. So when they see you suddenly talk to them and you're talking in a completely different way, they notice it, they hear it, they feel that they're being treated differently, and they don't necessarily want to be treated differently. So it's, I'm often just, there's some basic things like energy in my voice and volume in my voice. If I don't have the right energy or the right volume, it's hard from a very simple perspective to get the attention that I want. But a lot of that comes from confidence. Like, I don't know if you've had this in the past where like you just feel more confident talking to a certain group of kids, and without realizing it, like your energy's better, your volume's better, and you've got this connection, you've kind of got this buy-in, and it just boils back from that confidence. And vice versa. If you're not feeling it that day, you're a bit tired, or you're not super confident, or you're a bit worried the kids are going to run all over you, you go in, you're a little bit tentative, you're a little bit quiet, and sure enough, they don't respect you as a leader, and they start to run havoc all over you. So yeah, I think it's crazy how your voice is a super powerful tool for connecting with kids. I often hear coaches say like, well, I'm not really a kids coach. I'm not really that lively, energetic, bubbly person. Like, anyone that knows me will probably not put like lively, energetic, and bubbly. You wouldn't like attach those words to me outside of coaching. But, but when I'm coaching, I don't turn into someone I'm not. I'm just a different version of myself. I'm still me, but I'm me with some good breakfast and coffee in me. Like, I'm me with good energy. I'm me that's excited. I'm still me. So I think that's a common misconception, is that you need to talk a certain way to kids. You need to act a certain way. And to some degree, yes, that's true. But largely it's not true. Just be yourself, be confident, have good energy in your voice. These are basic things that you would have if you're talking to an adult and you're excited about something talking to an adult, you would kind of talk the same way to the kid.
Yeah. And I often think about the how you say something with a kid and with adults too. But in this regard, flipping around statements into questions can often be a helpful tool to make the connection. I was coaching a kid recently who wanted to learn to jump.
Yeah.
And I had my agenda and, did all my things and I could tell like he wasn't super stoked on, the actual learning, the how to. And I'm just like, well, what, how are things going right now?
Yeah.
It's like I kind of opened that door, and started flipping things around with questions. And I realized that, man, he just wants to have fun.
Yeah.
And that turned the lesson, into where, he was getting out of what he needed to get out of it.
Yeah. Cool.
Which was fun, and then the takeaway was, learning some real basic things with jumping, which is what the parent had signed him up for this lesson, and the parent wanted him to learn to jump.
Yeah.
And so it was like this interesting little kind of puzzle to kind of work through in the moment.
Well, I think that's a cool situation to highlight for a little bit, because it's quite common, right? Where like the parent has this student goal in mind. Like I want the kid to learn how to climb better or corner better, or I want the kid to learn how to do drops safely so they're not crashing. But then either the parent hasn't communicated that to the kid, or if they haven't honestly really checked, like, does the kid actually want to be there? Do they actually want to learn it? And maybe the kid does want to learn it, but they don't want to do it that week because they've been doing something else all week and they're tired. So you often get that kind of disconnect where parent wants X and the kid wants Y. And, the job of the coach is to try and get both X and Y achieved, really. And I think one tool I see coaches missing sometimes is just being open and honest with the kid about the process. So for sure, parent wants the kid to learn to jump. Kid's not really that into it. Kid just wants to ride. It's trying to link those two together and saying, hey, look, like, if you want to have fun, but if I can teach you these things, you're actually going to have more fun on the jump. So we can still work on your goal of just riding and having fun, but we can also achieve this other goal that your parents kind of had in mind. And it's really about linking those. And sometimes that's easy to do in short term. Sometimes kids will buy into that short term. Sometimes they'll resist. And if they resist, we just have to be creative and not let the kid sort of dictate too much your plan. Like, there's ways to connect the parent goal and the student goal, the kid's goal. And we just have to be creative about it. So another example is just choosing your battles and when to, I kind of think of it as like focus in and focus out. Well, let's focus out for a bit and let's just go have a fun lap and give you a bit of what you want. And then on the next lap, let's focus in a little bit and I just want to show you a couple of quick things on jumps. Yeah, can you do that for me? And then after that, we can focus out a bit and go back towards your goal. So there's all these little tactics that you can employ that will give the kid what they want, show that you value their goal as well as their parents' goal. If we just take their parents' goal, then we're showing that their goals don't matter and we don't want to do that. That's not going to help us connect. So there's little tactics like that can really help you link some of those. I kind of think of them as triangles. The coach has a goal, the parent has a goal, the student has a goal, and there's this triangle that we need to try and look after each point.
Yeah, exactly. And, this specific situation with the thing that I decided to do was have the kid lead me. Like, let me watch you jump.
Yeah.
Let's just go do a fun lap. The trail that you like, your favorite trail. I'm going to just show me, and like halfway down, I like realized like he just wanted to be seen. Yeah. He wanted to be seen and to be validated. Like he knew how to jump.
Yeah.
But so again, back to that whole triangle of like, how do I fit into that triangle as the coach?
Yeah.
And how do I work it so that all three sides, to use your analogy, are supporting each other and not one of them working against the other.
Yeah, and it all boils back to connection. Like that, I can think of another example this summer where I had a kid in one of my groups that is by far the strongest downhiller in the group. Like he actually goes, when we do bike park days, he actually goes up a group to an older bunch of kids, and he still pushes those kids. Like he's so far ahead of the curve when it comes to downhill. But pedaling days, like he does not like climbing, and he'll drag his ass up the hill at the back of the group. Like, and it's pretty hilarious. But I kind of focused in on like, what does he like? What are the things that he connects with? Well, he connects with doing well. He connects with being the best, because he often is. It's just his dynamic in the group. So you've really got to kind of connect with each kid in the group and realize, why is that kid in that place in that group? And how is that helpful? So he likes the competitiveness. So I just started turning the climbs into a bit of a competition for him and one other kid in the group. And after that, anytime I went climbing with him, he was good. He was at the front or close to the front. So I feel like, going back to this kind of how we talk to kids and how we connect, like it's about understanding the world from their perspective. And sometimes adults are too literal, or they've kind of forgotten what it's like to be a kid, and they're kind of putting too much expectation on the kid being a perfect learner. If you go in with unrealistic expectations, you will always come out with frustration. And that's something I commonly see in kids coaching. Coaches getting frustrated, kids not doing this, kids not doing that, whatever it is, behavior thing, a motivation thing. You're just forgetting who you're teaching. You're teaching a kid. Their brain hasn't even finished growing yet. They don't have basic life skills. They haven't. They're like a lot of kids at a certain age, like especially that, I would say like 6 to 10. They're essentially narcissistic. They're only concerned primarily with their own little world. And that's not mean, that's just developmental. They just don't develop like true empathy and understanding or other people's perspectives until they're sort of early teens, even beyond that. So expecting the kid to be empathetic with you because you're having a hard day, that's never going to happen. Expecting the kid to follow instructions every time the way you want, it's not going to happen. So focus in and focus out, like focus on little targets that you can win, and then focus out and let them have some targets that they can win. So with this kid climbing, I just gave him a few little nuggets of things he connects to, like competition and being strong. And straight away he was getting up ahead of the group. And then sure enough, next day we were climbing, he was at the back again. So am I going to get frustrated with that? No, because I'm teaching a kid, right? Like
right.
Any parent out there that like has taught their kids to brush their teeth, brushing teeth is not hard. We all know this. It's brushy, and upside, outside, inside. What do I say? Left side, right side, upside, downside, inside, outside, front side, back side. You can remember that. Say that 6 times fast, you get a free donut. But like you teach kids how to brush their teeth, and you literally remind them to brush their teeth. I mean, my daughter is nearly 11. Actually, she's pretty good. But she's 11 now, so it's 11 years. And she's still, so when you're getting things like trying to build habits on climbs, it's not going to happen because you've said it 2 or 3 times. That's something you're going to have to work on for the whole summer. You're going to have to engage the parents. You're going to have to engage the kid. You're going to have to focus in and get them to try some tools, and then focus out and let them do what they want. Let them troll at the back for a while. Have a day where you don't care if they're at the back, but don't expect them to be a perfect learner, because they're not. And that false expectation will just create too much frustration. And then you'll disconnect. And then the coach will actually start to disconnect. And that is not what we want.
Yeah. And I think, to add on to that, there's day-to-day variability with kids as well.
Yeah.
They may be near the perfect learner one day, and the next day just be a mess.
Absolutely.
And that's just it. Again, if we come into that as a coach getting frustrated, then we're only setting ourselves up for more frustration, because that's just the natural part of working with kids.
Yeah. Well, if you think of like how are we as adults? I mean, how many days do you have a perfect work routine? And how many days do you wake up feeling great, ready to go? If you as an adult, like for those of you out there that like have a boss at work, it's kind of the same thing. You've got this boss telling you what to do each week. And some weeks you're up for it. You're like, yeah, I'm kind of into this. This project's kind of cool, and my boss is kind of treating us nicely. But then the next week you're like, I am not into this at all. But you still have to do it. So you drag your feet. You kind of moan. We do the same stuff as an adult, and the best thing you can do with kids is understand that you're still a mess. You're still broken. You haven't finished yourself yet. You're still working on yourself. And if you're doing that at 30 years old, 40 years old, and you've got this 7-year-old or 9-year-old, Jesus, cut them some slack, give them a break. And as soon as you cut them slack, guess what? You'll connect with them better, and you'll all have a good time. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want to learn more about us, please check out our first info episode, which digs into who we are, what we do, and our background in the coaching and mountain bike industry. You can also check us out on Instagram at Donuts and Bikes, or our podcast website is the Mountain Bike Coaching Podcast.buzzsprout.com. All right, back to the show.
Cool. So thinking about the kids that we work with, and that you mentioned, the downhiller, the climber, the different groups, kids and coaches sometimes become aware of their position, so to speak, within a group.
Yeah.
And it's common in my coaching experience for us to be getting ready to go downhill, and the kids will organize themselves into, this person's always first, this person's always second, and this person's always last, right?
Yeah.
Which speaks towards the concept of labeling.
Yeah.
Right. Where there's labeling in this sense is kind of identifying the characteristics of a person, as something that's fixed, as who they are, instead of what they're doing. Right. And then associating with that. And when we do that, when we associate them as like, well, they're always up in the front, or they're always the on top of learning X, Y, and Z. They're the first ones to learn how to do whatever. When we do that, we can sometimes inadvertently weaken our connection, the connections that we have, either with the individual that we're working with or the group themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So looking at how do we avoid this idea of labeling, and just like really trying to see the kids for what they're doing and where they are in that moment, on that day, what are their needs, and how can we connect it to them with this, instead of having that preconceived, well, they're the best, the fastest downhiller, so they should be able to do this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up, because I feel like this is also really good for helping the connection between the kids, right? Like if if you look at the kid that's, say, in that group and they're always at the back, then they'll start to create that self-image of, well, I'm the weakest rider, I'll go at the back, rather than I'm a part of this team and everyone gets a chance to mix things around, and everyone has different strengths, everyone has different weaknesses. Again, as an adult, if you were in a group and you were always at the back because everyone else was like, hey, I'm faster than you, I'm going to go at the front, I mean, how's that going to make you feel as an adult? So I think the labeling is key, and things like, the classic one with kids is like one kid might ride a line and then be like, yeah, that was easy. But then two other kids haven't done it yet. And so now, and they know they're not ready to do it, but this kid has said it's easy. So really working with the kids to show respect and empathy. And these are things they can learn short term. They can understand that if I say this, it might make her or him feel not as confident or not as good as about themselves. Kids can understand empathy on a short-term basis, and they might not feel it, but they can understand the concept of empathy, and they can certainly understand the concept of respect because they know what it feels like when they're treated with respect and when they're not treated with respect. So those two words really come to mind when we talk about labeling. Like, if you write something, try and say something like, yeah, that felt good, but yeah, it took me a lot of practice to get to this point. Or, that felt good. It was pretty good. Jack, you've got this. Or, Sally, you can do this. Like, if you're going to say it's good, at least also set someone else to do it, and so they can hopefully feel more confident doing it. So I think just watching that language is a huge piece. Like another one for language with dynamics in groups is like even between groups, like moving up or down a group. So we have a thing with our programs in Whistler where we just say moving across groups. All the groups are in the same program. Kids learn at different rates. There'll be some weeks where some kids are progressing quicker and they might work better in this group, and some weeks where some kids want to work on A instead of B, and so they'll move into this group over here. So it's trying to create a program where the groups are fluid somewhat, because it's nice to have a consistent coach and a consistent group, but at the same time it's nice to have some fluidity so kids can move across groups based on what they want to learn, their student goals, the parent goals, and the rates of progression. So instead of up and down, we kind of talk about moving across groups, and instead of saying it was easy, we say, well, that was easy for me. Hey, but I think you can do it as well. Like, just, that's a big part of kids coaching is most of the time you're not teaching biking.
Right.
Like a good kids coach should be teaching respect, empathy, leadership in the kids, teaching the kids how to work together, teaching the kids about teamwork, teaching the kids about being humble. You're teaching that stuff just as much as you're teaching biking and braking and body position and things like that. And I put more energy into how I connect with kids than what I'm going to teach on the bike that day, because the biking piece is easy, especially if all the other stuff is there, right?
Exactly, right. And then with all that other stuff in place, including, I love the inclusion of the idea of teaching humbleness.
Yeah, that's
which
huge.
is that it's a much needed concept that for kids and adults too. But once those things are in place, then the writing drives the learning.
Yeah,
like you said, the teaching of writing is actually very straightforward, especially for kids.
Yeah,
check this out. Let's go. And it's pretty
well. And even beyond that, like the guiding skills. Like if you just purely go risk management, you need kids to listen to you if they trust you and feel safe with you and comfortable with you. The risk management is way up, because they're going to say, "Hey, Paul, I'm not feeling this. I want to walk around it." No worries, dude. Let's walk around it. But if they don't feel comfortable with you, don't trust you, they might melt down at the top of the trail because now they don't know what they're getting into, or they might not say that and then they'll ride it because they're scared to say something and then they'll crash. So, yeah.
Well, I think just to name this and put a point in it is the relationship between connection and risk management is one of the greatest assets that we have, right? I mean, we've been talking about all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, safety is always first. And if there's not a connection, and we haven't built the trust and the empathy and the vulnerability, then the child's going to feel embarrassed not to ride something and feel pressure to do it.
I think it might be worth totally. Like language is a key piece to all this, and being careful of how we talk, the volume, the speed, the pitch in our voice. These are all tools that we can use to connect better with kids. But I also think of like some practical tips. I guess this kind of goes a bit into culture versus discipline, but maybe we'll touch on that in a sec. But, I was just thinking of like some classic roadblocks or examples of how I connect with kids and how I create that comfort zone with them. But it's really basic. I think that's what some instructors miss, is like some things I notice I do more often than maybe other coaches is getting down low and just talking to them face to face, giving them little fist pumps, talking to them about what's their favorite movie, what did they play on the PlayStation this week, what did they do at school this week, what's their favorite book. Like we talk about this a lot in coaching. These are all like really super low hanging fruits. But like a lot of low hanging fruits, if you actually know how to do that really well, it creates a huge difference. Like I had a coach that was having a hard time with a couple of kids in their group. And I went in and I just went down onto one knee and just sort of changed my tone in my voice. I wasn't instructor kind of voice. I wasn't teacher voice. I was just sort of, hey buddy kind of voice. Hey bud, how you doing? Like, what's up with you today? Is there anything I can help you with? I got quite a soft tone to my voice because the kid in question had a soft personality, like a really, really nice kid. He's not one of those sort of boys that's kind of rough and rugged. Like he's a pretty soft, sweet kid. And so really adjusted my tone of voice for the kid. How you doing, bud? What was going on this week? What would you like to do today? Like, give me one thing you want to do and we won't worry about the others. And just starting that, we often talk about language, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, labels to use or labels to avoid. But I always think of body language. So if I match my body language with my tone of voice, my eye-to-eye connection, my little fist pumps, maybe a pat on the shoulder, whatever it might be, it's amazing how powerful those basic tips can be. Finding a common clue with movies, like that. I know a bunch of coaches that don't really watch a lot of movies or don't really know anything about kids' TV shows. I'm lucky in that I have kids, so I know what they're doing. But I knew what kids were into before I had kids because basically I never really grew up. I think the childish nature of myself definitely helps me connect with kids. Like I'm still into rating child cars. I still love Star Wars. Like all the things I loved when I was a kid, I pretty much still love. And so I guess that's one way for any listeners out there connecting is stop being such an adult, stop being so serious, so adulty, so teachery. Like be that, when it comes to the kids and you've got kids that day, like be the kid, just relax, let it go. Don't be proud of yourself, too proud to just be a kid yourself, because really you are still just a kid yourself, I think. I'm just a 44-year-old kid that has a little bit more worldly knowledge, but not much. Right? I don't know. What do you think? Does that relate to you? Like, have you seen coaches that have tried to teach kids and it's kind of just awkward because they're just being so much like an adult?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Seen that training instructors, in a variety of contexts, and it's very, very, very common. And a bit of just to put a tangible tool here that I use personally, paraverbal communication. And you've been talking about that, but just to name not just the body language and getting down at their level, but really looking at our voice as a tool in and of itself. Like how can you manipulate your voice, your pace, the cadence, the sing-songiness?
Yeah.
How you use pauses. If you think about like a camp counselor, how cheery they sound and how captivating they are with the kids, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They've got, they go through training on all of this, on how to lead songs and that is just a great tool that the kids can they hear and they see it, and they see this adult-sized human, but out of their mouth is coming something else. You know, it's like there's something else going on here, and it's interesting, and it's not this adult that's treating me like, you know, another adult, so to speak.
Yeah. There's this sort of magic I find to a good teacher's voice, where there's this kind of authority, there's this seriousness in their voice, but it's very much in the background, and in the foreground there's this sort of open, soft quality to their voice, where the kids feel very safe. So there's that kind of balance of like, okay, I need to respect this person because clearly they're the leader, they know what they're saying, but there's this softness to it, and there's this vulnerability. Like if kids see that you're vulnerable, that's amazing. If kids can see that you're kind of like them a little bit, that's where connection lies, is, oh, we've got something in common, right? Like, so, and that's a hard trick to do. Like with the, you know, the volume's a good place to start. If you're too loud, kids will switch off. And then often what happens is the coach will see that the kids are disconnecting, they're misbehaving, they're not listening. So they'll talk louder. And so it's a bit like if you have a loud radio in the background, you switch off, right? Like it's really loud, but you're not paying any attention. So making it louder isn't going to make me listen to it anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, coming in with a soft tone of voice, loud enough that it demands attention. But I like with the volume to change the dial. Maybe I'll start quiet and get louder if I need, and then if I'm too loud, I'll bring it down. So trying to put sort of things like the volume or the pitch. I have quite a low voice, so if I'm not aware of it, it can come across quite serious or even a bit intimidating, especially if I'm teaching like the Princess Dragons, which is one of our girls groups in the Kids Shred last year. If I go in there with the big booming pool voice, you know, it's not really the right tool for my audience, right? So I'm going in there and I'm talking a little bit more like this, and a little bit quicker and a little bit higher pitch. Hey girls, how you doing? Where should we ride today? Any choices? What would you like to do? And I'm just trying to, again, take whether it's the volume or the pitch or how fast I talk or how slow maybe I'm talking, and really changing these dials, because the variation in your voice is what helps kids stay invested, stay interested. And then hopefully from those two things, that's where we get that connection. But yeah, just some other little examples there for me of that stuff.
Awesome. So I think that moving on into, you mentioned culture and discipline a bit ago, and thinking about that as another culture in and of itself as a tool. And we've kind of been illustrating through this discussion of connection and likeness or connectedness of the culture that we're trying to create, like a culture that's connected, student to student, kid to kid, kid to coach as well. How do you see discipline kind of fitting into this idea of culture and the creation of of common goals or agreed upon outcomes, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think a good coach uses culture and discipline as and when they need. So like they're just two tools to help direct and guide children. Discipline is amazing if you know how to do it properly and when to do it and how much to do it. Like discipline is a very efficient way of getting kids to basically do what you want or to follow the plan. So I think one of the misperceptions is discipline means telling kids off. And that's really sort of the old school, probably opinion of what discipline is. But really discipline is just saying, here's the rules. And if we don't follow the rules, there's a consequence. And you can be as harsh or as soft as you want with that. But what discipline does is it just keeps things short and sweet, hey team, you messed around at lunch, so we're not going to do that trail after lunch. I'm going to pick the trail now. Like, your behavior wasn't cool. You're all too loud. And so I'm going to pick the trail now after lunch. And they might moan and whine, but like, that's what discipline is there's a rule and then there's an outcome. And the key for the discipline to work is that the coach or the teacher sticks to the outcome. Otherwise, the kids are just going to learn that whatever you say isn't going to stand. And that's critical. So you have to set the rule and choose a consequence that's fair and firm. So if it's a minor break of the rule, then the consequence has to be a minor consequence, and it just has to match up. And then you have to stick to it, and they'll learn that if you set a rule in the future and you set a consequence in the future, that you'll follow that through, and that helps them trust you. That helps them respect you, because they see as an adult, as a leader, that you mean what you say. But discipline isn't just shouting at kids and telling them off. Usually what happens, coaches or teachers get frustrated and they lose their patience, and then they end up shouting or getting frustrated with the kids. Usually that happens because they haven't set the rule in the first place. They haven't checked for understanding of the rule. And then they haven't told the kids the consequence of the rule. And or in the past, they haven't actually followed through with the consequence. So it's, in a way, it's like basic parenting 101. Like a little bit like, set the rule, make sure the rule's fair, set the consequence, make sure the consequence is fair, and then do what you said you were going to do, and repeat that. Like, keep doing that, always do that.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, don't do it once and then never do it again. So discipline can be a really helpful way of just keeping kids, for lack of a better term, kind of in line and on the program, but still keeping it positive. But on the other hand, I think discipline is really the backup to culture. Like
right.
What are your thoughts on that, in terms of like, what is culture, and why do we really try and lean in and prioritize culture? So then discipline is really like the plan B.
Yeah. I mean, culture is the, kind of the preventative medicine.
Yeah.
Right. So in this analogy that we're using here, and so you're creating something at the outset of an experience where the group and the behaviors are outlined in terms of expectations, and how we relate to each other, the safety rules, of course, and all of these things of, if they're agreed upon, and if we can get everybody on the same page with this through some activities at the beginning, understanding of where they are, what we're doing, then discipline is this thing that's in the background.
Yeah.
And it's there, we're ready to use it, as you kind of outlined. And again, I really like the concept that discipline is not making somebody do push-ups because they did something wrong, or yelling at somebody. Yeah. Kind of that old school, we're both old enough to have seen, probably gone through that in school ourselves, right?
For sure.
Misbehavior results in, some sort of outcome that's not connected to the behavior at all.
Yeah.
And so if we're establishing culture very intentionally at the beginning, like we're intentionally creating the community that of values that we want to see in the group. Yeah. We're communicating what the plan is for the afternoon or the day or whatever, what the expectations are for individuals' behavior in terms of following the safety rules.
Yeah.
Then, a lot of our work is done for us if we get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. It's almost like the kids connect between themselves, and they manage the behaviors between themselves.
Right.
And it's the same with adults.
Yeah. Yeah. And ideally that's a fully functioning team.
Yeah.
Whether it's our kids that are going mountain biking with us on the trail, or a soccer team, football team.
Yeah.
It's like they're managing their own behaviors because they have the connectedness between themselves.
Yeah. The other cool thing with the culture is it creates this degree of autonomy where the kids are starting to take responsibility for themselves, responsibility for each other as a team. And it starts to create that autonomy where the coach can focus more on the coaching and less on the behavior.
Right.
And that's key. Like one thing I'll often say with setting rules and setting a culture, or whether it's even the discipline side of things, is definitive language. So, if it's like, you guys can't ride down the stairs, and if you do, I don't know, I've got to think of a consequence now, but like something like, if you ride down the stairs, then we're going to have 20 minutes off the bike, or we're going to not ride that trail that you wanted to go ride this afternoon. I'll pick the trail, or whatever it is, right? Like, pretty definite. What I often see with coaches is from the discipline side, where coaches get frustrated with kids that are acting badly, kids that aren't listening. And you listen to that coach teach, and there's a lot of maybes and ifs, and I don't think you should. So going back to some of that language, like, I don't really think, we shouldn't really be riding down the stairs. We shouldn't really be riding down the stairs. If you're a kid with like even just 2% of cheekiness in you, you're going to be like, screw it. He doesn't really mean it.
He didn't say not to.
He didn't say not to. So I'm going to ride down the stairs because I'm an 8-year-old kid, right? So it's like, you cannot ride down the stairs. That is a firm rule. And these are the reasons why. So often rules get dictated and not explained. So
right.
You've got to explain the rule. This is what the rule is, and this is why. And here's a consequence if that rule's broken. But usually the why should manage the rule. Like, we're not going to ride down the stairs. That's not allowed. Why? It's not appropriate. We're in a walking pedestrian zone here. And it's just not safe. And we don't want you to get hurt. We don't want you to hurt someone else. So usually the why should kind of help build that culture where the kids are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Let's not ride down the stairs. But yeah, things like, I don't think you should do it, or, I really, let's try not to ride down the stairs. Just be definitive in your language. It's key. The classic one is like riding too close to each other on a transfer trail, or along like a valley trail, or sort of an urban pathway or something. It's like, hey team, like, we have to stay apart because there's other people on this trail system. If someone stops suddenly, we won't crash into them. Like, it just makes sense. Like, do you guys agree? Like, getting that buy-in from your team is key for culture. Like, does this make sense, everyone? Like, do I need to explain this again? No? Okay, sweet. And that's where the culture can come in. But again, rewinding back to what we said earlier, remember who you're teaching. Kids. So it's not a one-time set and done deal in anything, whether you're establishing culture with rules or discipline. Like, you will always have to repeat yourself, because it's partly how they learn. Like, understanding how kids learn is massive. They learn through trial and error. They learn by pushing boundaries. They learn through repetition, because they haven't built the neural pathways yet to create a habit. So a lot of the habits we have as adults, it's through hours and hours of repetition that we've kind of forgotten that we had. And so we've built these neural pathways that help us perform that behavior, do that behavior autonomously. It's almost like the wiring in your brain is set up for it. Like, if you have a computer that controls a computer in a car that controls the pitch of the car around the corner, like how level the body is in the car, you need to install a program for the computer to do that. And then you need to monitor that program and add to that program. That's kind of what your brain is doing as you develop from a young age, is you're installing programs to learn certain behavioral patterns. So understanding how kids learn is key, regardless of cultural discipline, for you to not get frustrated as a coach. Sorry, I went off on a slight tangent there. But.
No, it's good. Good analogy there. Yeah, very good analogy. Well, let's. We've been going about an hour. Let's maybe a couple more points here to talk about. And we could talk for hours about human development. Well, all of this, right? But
yeah,
human
totally.
but specifically like human development in the age characteristics. But I like what you said. Just I'm going to keep this really brief because I think this is a really important thing to highlight. Kids inherently, I think the research shows are narcissistic.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but to reframe that word, they're acting out of their own self-interest.
Yeah.
Because they're inwardly focused. They're a product of their being raised by their parents, and they're connected to their parents. That's where their world experience is. And at some point, we as a coach, we have to recognize that. Like when we see a kid that's self-interested or narcissistic or whatever we want to call it, that's just where they are.
Yeah.
That's who they are. That's totally normal. At some point, to keep this concise, there's this outward focus that happens, where the kid starts to really explore concepts of identity. Who am I? And how do I start relating to other people? And that's a natural part of the process that we see in teens as well. And I've seen coaches in the past like work with a kid that's newly emerging kind of into that zone and talk about that. This kid is so egocentric.
Yeah.
Because like, well, yes, because they're trying to find their identity.
Yeah.
Like they've gone through all this, 13 years of life of finding out who they are, and it's still emerging. Yeah. And so I think the take home message for me in terms of working with kids on mountain bikes is there's a lot of stuff that we see it's part of human development. And we have to, we need to really educate ourselves on what those phases of human development are, and then not take their actions personally.
Yeah, totally.
We're the coach. We're here to show them mountain biking and all these other things we've been talking about. And we're assisting them through this whole process.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a great tool that helps with that is how well can you remember what it was like when you were a kid to go through that. And that requires quite a lot of self-awareness and a decent chunk of memories too, because some people can't even remember a bunch of stuff when they were kids. But like, I vividly remember a lot of like learning situations as a kid, whether it was like in school or scouts or tennis club or biking with my buddies or whatever it was, or social, like going out, like really trying to cue into a memory when you were like 6 to 8 or like 9 to 12 or like 13 to 17. They're kind of our three. We kind of have 5 and under, and then 6 to 8, 9 to 12, and 13 to 17, kind of our 3 or 4 age categories there of physical and social and mental development within children. And picking one of those and trying to think of a few situations and maybe even write it down, like get a journal and try and write like 3 experiences that you can remember when you were 9 and 12 or 13 to 17 that involved you being in a group setting, learning a skill, having a mentor or a guide or a teacher, and really take some time to remember what it was like to be that age. Because that will help you be empathetic to the kid, understand where they're coming from, what lens are they looking through. It's a completely different lens to the world that we're looking through, and it's a much tinier lens. So all these things that we kind of expect would happen or we would want to happen, they don't always happen. But that's the beauty of teaching kids, because it's a challenge. It's not easy, but if you can do it well, it's the most rewarding thing ever, because you're shaping, it's a cheesy cliche, but you're literally shaping the next generation. There is nothing more fulfilling than a kid coming back to you when they were 20 saying, you changed my life. You introduced me to mountain biking, and now I have a education in the outdoor industry. Or there's some kids I know that have got no career in the outdoor industry, but they still mountain bike because they mountain biked with me when they were 12 or 13 or 14. And I mean, that just makes you sort of warm up inside and go all gooey and mushy. But like, it's incredible as an adult to help somebody along the right path in their life. And that's what we're doing when we teach kids. So I think the other thing that helps me is remembering the value of teaching kids, because yes, it's hard. And today was a bad day. And oh my God, the kids were driving me nuts and I couldn't get a grip and I just couldn't be patient with them. They were driving me nuts, but I'm going to stick with it because the outcome of if I do stick with it is something pretty profound. It's pretty huge. I mean, I have an opportunity here to shape this kid's childhood, to shape this kid's relationship even with their parents and their siblings. I was working with 2 kids this summer, brothers that were just fighting all the time. And I was only working with them at the end of the summer, so I didn't really get much of an opportunity, but it's definitely something on my radar for next summer. I was working, my goal really for those 2 is to just be better brothers. And I have a real shot at doing that. We have a real shot at doing that. And that's huge. That's profound. So it goes way beyond the bike. And it is literally the best thing I think anyone can ever do is help a kid along the right road.
Wow, that was really cool. maybe remember saying one of my education mentors used to tell me is something along the lines of the kids that we teach are messengers to a future generation.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
that's sick. Yeah, it's a very privileged position, I think, to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think that this is would be a great place to end this episode.
Yeah.
So we could go obviously on and on about this, but I think that this highlights a really cool point. I think maybe it'd be great to end here so that people can have this to hang on to, whether they're coaching kids or getting inspired to.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I hope this episode helped and it's good times.
Yeah.
Donuts.
Hey, donuts. We've had
some time out. There was a point in the winter where we were doing quite a lot of podcasts and I was eating probably too many donuts in the name of research. So I've actually quite enjoyed a bit of a break. So I was like, oh, I don't have to eat a donut this week. This is good. But I'm ready for more donuts now. I lost a bit of weight. I'm good to go.
On that note, I can share a donut story.
Okay, let's do it.
This is a first for me. I was at the beach here in North Carolina this summer, and just great time down with my youngest soccer team, and I was working as or volunteered to go as the cook for the team.
Oh yeah,
for this team camp for the week. So I had they were doing soccer, so I was either cooking, shopping, swimming.
You're a good cook, so that's I think that's too good for them.
It was pretty challenging. It was 23 people I was cooking for. It was exciting.
If any of you get to go around Kristian's for dinner, you should, because he's a very good cook.
Thanks. But I had free time early in the morning, and I'd get on my longboard and go on this greenway and skate. And there was this donut shop, and it wouldn't open until like 9:00, which I thought was ridiculously late for a donut shop to be opening at the beach.
That sounds pretty good for me. I'm not going to be up before that.
Anyway, I finally planned my day out so I could go to this donut shop, and because there's always later in the day I'd see there be a line there. I'm like, that must be good. And man, the donuts were so large and so heavy. Like usually, I could sometimes eat two smaller donuts. So I got 2 donuts, not knowing what I was going to get, and I couldn't eat both of them. It was a first for me.
Wow!
And it was massive, heavy. It was more like eating a cake.
Wow! Challenge accepted.
Challenge, yeah. Plus, it's like the beach was hot. It's like, so it was one of those kind of a donut experience that glad I had, but it's definitely not my favorite.
Yeah, that sounds cool. What were the donuts?
I always new donut shop. Always try to get 1 cinnamon sugar, like just a kind of a plain. Just that's kind of like my quality tester.
Like baseline.
baseline.
That's like tiramisu. If I go into an Italian restaurant, that's my
right. Like you've got to be able to nail a cinnamon sugar donut.
Yeah, totally.
Which is pretty good. Then it had I can't remember what it was. It had chocolate and bacon.
Chocolate and bacon.
And bacon, yeah. It was pretty out there.
Oh wow, that sounds good.
So, all right, well,
love it.
Back on the donuts.
Back on the donuts, yeah. Sweet. Well, thanks, buddy. That was great.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show and that it sparked some ideas for your writing and your coaching. As always, our approach to coaching is on pros and cons, not rights and wrongs. And with that in mind, our podcast is meant to be more of a conversation about topics and techniques rather than a final say in how to ride or how to teach. As always, please take care if using or applying any of the techniques discussed in this podcast. Stay safe, ride smart, and we'll see you next time.